Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I have Neil Geit back on the show today, not to talk about his swim challenge, but to talk about his job that he actually has and researching on metabolic health and timing this with the holiday season, how to do my favorite little holiday treats I make right around Christmas and using allulose, as we've heard a lot of research lately on allulose. So Neil is the person to contact to discuss it more, or my go-to. So Neil, thanks for coming up back on the podcast on a totally different topic.
Well, thank you. It is a totally different topic, but it is all somewhat related. So no, happy to speak about anything allulose and or metabolic health related because both of them are intimately related to each other, actually.
What is allulose and how is it connected to metabolic health? As you work for RX Sugar, and we'll get to what that is, but tell us a little bit what is the connection of how this all works together.
Yeah, so maybe share a little bit my kind of what happened to me, I would say that made me realize the two are connected, and then we'll dig into, I would say, what is allulose. So my own health journey from being incredibly overweight and metabolically unfit and having pre-diabetes and fast track to these diseases to doing athletic endeavors like the swim got me interested in metabolism. And in parallel, the impact of chronic disease on family and loved ones got me really digging into what causes all of these chronic diseases, from cancer to heart disease to diabetes to Alzheimer's to bipolar. And I came to the realization that mitochondria and ultimately metabolic health is kind of the root cause of a lot of these things. And the majority of those diseases can be reversible and preventable. And as I then understood that and understood the biology of the body, I was looking at how do I help a billion plus people become metabolically healthy? What are the biggest levers that we can pull related to metabolic health? And as I was looking at the pie chart of metabolic health, of which food and nutrition is probably the biggest part, but movement, sleep, stress management, environment, toxins are important. The food portion was the biggest underserved segment. And the biggest driver of metabolic dysfunction within the food system is actually sugar, specifically fructose table sugar, which has glucose and fructose in. It's found in 73% of all of the foods that you find on the supermarket shelf. And it is the biggest driver of metabolic dysfunction because fructose specifically is a mitochondrial toxin. And not many people actually know and realize that. We think of sugar as being empty calories or being benign. So as I realized that, I started looking what are the solutions in the space, food space specifically, and there were very few. I then came across the amazing science around allulose. And what allulose is a natural rare sugar. So it's found in small amounts in a lot of different foods in nature, things like corn, wheat, figs, maple syrup, but it has very small amounts of it. And it is this rare natural sugar that actually a lot of the science shows has interesting metabolic health benefits. So the first thing is it's not absorbed or metabolized by the body. So it's pretty much 0 calorie or virtually 0 calorie, but then acts as this metabolic signaler within the body that can help decrease your blood glucose. It can naturally stimulate GLP-1. It can increase fat oxidation and it can help reduce inflammation. And so I kind of stumbled across it and said, wow, that sounds amazing. Sounds too good to be true. And that led me down the rabbit warren of really digging into the science, realizing that a lot of the science is actually pretty amazing and incredible. And so then the sugar and sweetener industry is a $120 billion industry that is in the majority of the foods. So it very much aligns with my mission to try and replace the supply chain of the sugar and sweeteners with allulose because the science is really showing that it sits in the class of its own, not only just to be a neutral sweet alternative, but it has actually potential significant metabolic health benefits. So hopefully that was a nice kind of wrapped in story tying in my interest, metabolic health, with sugar, fructose, and how allulose can play into that.
Yes. Well, we have a similar goal that we're all hopefully more and more people are on a mission to improve metabolic health for ourselves and for creating awareness in the rest of the country and the world because it is coming down to cellular level, and you, as well as you, that I go down these rabbit holes that you end up going down about the mitochondria and how they create the energy, and how so much of a health of our mitochondria is related to metabolic health, which is related to the big topic is how we improve the aging process by
Yes.
looking at what we eat, but our exercise, but more importantly, I think it's a lot of the lifestyle habits on top of our nutrition habits.
Yes.
So I want to know how what the benefits are of allulose, because I keep hearing about it, and is actually started at when we at KetoCon Hack Your Health conference was April, and really started paying attention to allulose at that conference because Keto Mojo was doing a test with RX Sugar booth of using eat the chocolate, go get your blood sugar tested, come back and get
Yeah.
it tested again.
So that's one. So there were I would say many potential. The four kind of main ones that I mentioned previously of blood glucose control, stimulating GLP-1, which is the body's satiety hormone, increasing fat oxidation and reducing inflammation. They're the four main ones.
Mm.
The first one is probably, I'm not going to say the most important, but blood glucose control is fundamental to mitochondrial optimization and our physiology. And so the fun challenge we ran at Hack Your Health was this: can chocolate lower your blood sugar level, which based on largely what we know sounds pretty insane because there's no way that chocolate should be able to lower your blood glucose level. But a lot of the science, and there's, I can send the papers through to you. There have been randomized controlled trials specifically looking at allulose. And what these have shown is that allulose on its own, so just pure allulose, can actually decrease your postprandial glucose and insulin on its own. But when combined even with other sugars and carbohydrates, so the randomized controlled trial specifically looked at a combination of allulose plus table sugar, so sucrose. It can actually dampen the glycemic response than just sucrose alone. So you would get a very high spike with sucrose. You would get a moderate spike with sucrose plus allulose, but you would actually get a decrease in your glucose levels when you take just allulose on its own. And so to help kind of demonstrate this, so we formulate our chocolate bars with allulose and only four other ingredients in them. So they're super clean, super minimal. And so what people would do is they would go to Keto Mojo, they would have their blood glucose and their ketones tested at Keto Mojo. They would then come to the RX Sugar booth. We would give them one of our chocolate bars, and they would promise not to eat or drink anything for the next 30 minutes. And then they would go back and retest their blood glucose and ketone levels to see what they were. And the outcome of that was overwhelmingly every single person bar one, their glucose levels dropped, and most others either had their ketone levels either neutral or their ketones actually went up. The one person, it was quite funny, whose blood glucose level went up, we then started, and it didn't go up by that much. It was like 15 points. So it's okay, well, did you eat or drink anything? No, no, I didn't eat or drink anything. It's like, okay, well, did you do anything else? Did you do any vigorous exercise? Did you do anything else, in the 30 minutes? And they said, oh, yes, we went to try one of the sauna sleeping bags that were on demonstration of one of the booths. And of course, one of the known side effects of saunas is your body will upregulate your glucose metabolism, when you put it in a sauna environment. So that was just a fun test and challenge around it. But there's lots of videos out there on the internet
Mm.
talking about allulose and specifically its impact to help manage blood glucose control, which is why allulose is such an important tool, especially for those with diabetes or pre-diabetes who really need to help control their blood glucose levels. And it just happens to be this rare natural sweet sugar, so you can still have some syrup or some sugar in your coffee, but not spike your blood sugar. If anything, the opposite, it can help bring your blood sugar down.
So some people would probably say you shouldn't be eating those foods anyways, and having sweetness will just continue to get you to crave sweetness. Right. And then there's carnivore people. So this is designed for who's the avatar client to use this without having abusing the sugar addiction part moderator.
Yeah, so that brings up a really interesting point. So like even I would say if you and this comes back to the actually the fructose and the sugar pathway in the body. So we have selectively evolved a very high sensitivity to the fructose pathway in the body because in times of food scarcity, it actually saved us as a species. That ability for us to find sweet, calorie dense food, specifically to store fat that would see us through times of food scarcity, saved us as a species on multiple occasions. Now, our biology is still the same, but in current modern environment, our biology doesn't realize that our next food comes 2 or 3 hours and it is laden with sugar and laden with carbohydrates. So that mechanism is still very much in play. For those that can retire and totally put away that sweet pathway, which people on carnivore and on low carbohydrate diets can do, if you can do that, I totally agree with that. That's largely what I personally did and kind of have done. I have tried, and still use allulose to help have a little bit of balance between the two. So I think that's important. Outside of that, I think it is very useful as a tool to help take control of that pathway because, and I believe it's because allulose is only 70% as sweet as sugar or fructose, and it is less sweet. If you look at stevia and monk fruit, they're hundreds of times sweeter, so the intenseness. And there's another paper I can link you to, which actually talks to how the different levels of sweetness trigger different receptors in the brain.
Mm.
And so, from that perspective, I think allulose, one of the benefits is because it's not as sweet, it doesn't trigger off the same circuitry in the brain that in the majority of people kind of drive that addictive pathway. But there is also the emotional and psychological component to this. So I think if you can retire that pathway, great. If not, then allulose, the science seems to show that it stands head and shoulders above all of the other sweetener options out there. And I personally think use it as a tool to help take control of that fructose carbohydrate polyol pathway in the body. Because if you can control that pathway, then you're keeping your body much more in kind of homeostasis
Mm-hmm.
instead of being, I would say, chronically activating that switch, which can largely lead to a lot of the chronic diseases.
Mm-hmm. So with the GLP-1, it says here in the middle of the page of this blog from Keto Mojo, the anything you could speak to people that don't understand what the whole weight loss drugs are, GLP-1 inhibitors, and how that's related to metabolic health and how the connection of this. If you
Yep.
take allulose, I know there's some info out there, so share away.
Yeah, of course. So let's close the book a little bit on blood glucose levels. The second thing that allulose can do is it is a very potent natural stimulator of GLP-1, which is effectively the hormone within the body that signals satiety. So this is a naturally occurring hormone which is, turned on by natural foods. It just so happens that allulose significantly stimulates it and then comes with this 0 calorie kind of, sugar. So it allows you potentially to be able to still have something, I would say, sweet, but signal the satiety pathway in your body. Now, to be clear on this, it will not stimulate it to the super physiological levels that a Ozempic or Wegovy or any of these weight loss drugs does, but it does so in a natural way that food is designed to do by giving you a nice bump in GLP-1 as you eat to signal satiety. So it can very much help with satiety and portion control. Then after a few hours, that will drop back down. And personally, that is how our bodies are designed to work. And so the weight loss drugs, dial you up to a super physiological level. And they keep you there 24/7 for as long as you're taking it, which I don't believe aligns with our evolutionary biology. And which is why a lot of the side effects that come along with these drugs, yes, you can use a lot of weight on them, but you get a lot of other side effects at the same time. So I think allulose sits in this middle ground where it's really tackling the root cause, but doing so in a natural way of helping you to take control of the fructose carbohydrate pathway in your body, do so in a way that you can still naturally stimulate GLP-1 and get some satiety. And if you can layer in other, healthy food choices alongside of that, we actually have weight loss clinics that have been using our allulose as the foundation for their natural kind of GLP-1 weight loss program for the last 5 years and helped thousands of patients, um, you know, layer on other changes, nutritional movement changes, and reverse type 2 diabetes, reverse a lot of chronic diseases, come off medications naturally using allulose as one of the pieces of the metabolic health, jigsaw puzzle. And so I really recommend, people consider that as an option because it does naturally stimulate that satiety signal within your body.
Mm, so much interesting findings with this. So going back to what we said earlier about fructose of it. So fructose, people think of fruit juice, fruit, it's whole fruits. Talk about what fructose is if people are not sure where it comes from.
Yes. So fructose is a naturally occurring sugar found a lot in fruits, but actually table sugar is 50% fructose. So traditional sugar is one molecule of glucose attached to one molecule of fructose. Now, the glucose, I mean, our bodies create glucose. We can use glucose as energy within the mitochondria. So glucose is largely, I would say, benign in this. You need to keep, obviously, very careful control of your glucose levels because too much of it, more than a teaspoon or 4 grams within the blood, is toxic, which is why your body ramps up a lot of hormones to help get glucose out of the bloodstream. But fructose actually specifically is a sugar molecule which it is a mitochondrial toxin. So this will stop your mitochondria from processing energy properly. And actually within the body, it does so, it's specifically and purposefully to promote fat storage rather than energy utilization. And this is back to the evolutionary biology of it was a mechanism for us to store fat and not create energy in times of food scarcity. And so we wouldn't be here as a species without that pathway in the body. So it is an important pathway, but it was there specifically to promote mitochondrial dysfunction and store fat. In the current food environment, we simply do not need that anymore because we have food security. But what happens when you consume fructose is it triggers mitochondrial dysfunction and storage of fat rather than utilization. So it is much more than kind of empty calories, which it is what it's traditionally known for. And so, I think knowing and understanding that is one really important. And then the choice is, okay, well, and it comes in with fruits, it comes in obviously a different format than table sugar because it does come with fiber, which help, slow the absorption, and you don't fully absorb all of the fructose that necessarily comes, with that fruit. So small amounts of that, okay. But I would also look from an evolutionary perspective, and we were never designed from an evolutionary perspective to, I would say, eat fruit every single day, year in, year out. We would find fruit seasonally. And a lot of the clues from this come from nature, a little bit like bears. So if you look at the brown bears, they will eat, fatty salmon for most of the year. But when it comes to the autumn, prior to hibernation, they will switch and they will eat, they will seek out honey and berries, and they do so specifically to create mitochondrial dysfunction, to store fat, and then they hibernate over winter, but they then burn off those fat stores through the winter. Our human biology is exactly the same. But by constantly triggering this, survival or the fat switch, as it's called, day in, day out, it actually is leading to metabolic dysfunction. So I think that's where it is. I always look at things from an evolutionary perspective because our biology is still 50,000 years old. We haven't evolved to be able to take in, significant amounts of fructose and carbohydrates day in, day out because our biology just simply cannot cope with them long term. And it's that really leads to a lot of the breeding ground for the chronic diseases.
Hmm. And what were you guys had a seminar with Dr. Ben or Professor, I was thinking of his doctor because he's smarter than most anyone I know, but Ben Bickman, Professor Ben Bickman, who has the best, if anyone wants to learn more on metabolic health, watch his Metabolic Classroom YouTube channel. I just saw it yesterday that he's rebranded as just Ben Bickman and his website and everything. So plug for Ben Bickman. But you had a seminar for our FDN practitioner group last month. And how is this related, your conversation here, connected to what Ben Bickman's talking about?
So it's all very much related. So that episode, which is available for anyone to watch, so we can link it in the show notes as well. So that was specifically focused on GLP-1
Mm-hmm.
and to really educate what is. So it goes into much more detail than I would say explain, and Ben does
Yeah,
as always a way better job being the incredible professor he is.
professor.
So that really looks at GLP-1, why GLP-1 is important, and then really looks at, yes, we have weight loss drugs, but there are natural interventions of which reducing, carbohydrates, leaning into specific food types of, healthy fats and proteins, and then allulose as a piece of that jigsaw puzzle to help, naturally stimulate that GLP-1 pathway, which then leads to less food cravings, better portion control, and therefore through that you start to get this compounding effect over time of better, food choices. So that was really focused on the GLP-1 benefits, which is a significant part of the four, areas of the metabolic health benefits that a lot of the science that has been done on allulose, yeah, shows that it has a significant effect.
That would be good. Tie in this Keto Brains group that did a good blog on it here. We're showing on the screen. Talks a little bit, but this article is saying we'll put the link in the show notes.
So yeah, so the Keto Brains team so they yeah, obviously did their own research, looked at all the different science papers behind this, and put together, yeah, a really great article, which goes, I would say, a little bit into detail, not as much as Ben's talk, but it is a really great, read of. And then again, back to allulose will not do the same thing that the GLP-1 meds do, but I personally believe that is a good thing because you're just helping your own natural biology. Because maybe to look at this from a different lens, and I think Dr. Bickman, Professor Bickman, did a great job in the talk of this, which is actually a lot of GLP people who suffer actually have a GLP-1 deficit. So their body is not able to produce and stimulate GLP-1 because they're not taking enough of the foods that help stimulate GLP-1. And so then it comes up, okay, well, how can you start to change your food choices? And a lot of that isn't exclusively, but comes from ultra processed food and sugar and other things, which effectively, do not stimulate because they all create mitochondrial dysfunction. And what happens when your mitochondria can't function correctly? They actually start leaking ATP outside of the cell to send kind of a signal, which the body picks up on. And your body then says, oh, we don't have enough energy, get me more energy, therefore eat more. But what the body can't tell you is, eat more of the good foods that help create energy and then stimulate GLP-1. And so often then that creates hunger. And if you don't put the right food and nutrients in, you get into this vicious circle where you continue to create mitochondrial dysfunction if you're eating ultra processed foods, sugar, and other things that create that mitochondrial dysfunction. So that's why allulose is a really great tool that can help in those times. Often your cravings for sweet things increase. So you can have, one of the RX sugar chocolate bars or keto brownie mixes or a bit of syrup in your coffee, and you can get that sweetness, but you can then not kick off that metabolic, kind of vicious cycle that happens, and you
Mm-hmm.
can instead flip that into more of a positive metabolic environment, which is why a lot of the science out there really supports allulose as a really great tool that can help people take control of this metabolic kind of pathway and get them back into better metabolic health.
Mm. Yeah, so interesting. All right. So then going back to the beginning, I was saying I want to talk about where to get allulose, how to use it, and when is it appropriate. If you could walk us through what RX sugar is about. And as I was saying, it's holiday season. There's one time a year that I do Christmas baking, and I must admit, I can eat as much as I want the day before Christmas, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day, or because I'm Canadian. So I have 3 days, it just you give you that I give myself that rule that then you're just sick of it. So if you take away those restrictions, not everyone can do that. But if I make stuff that tastes good, I'll get sick of it and be done with it for another year. So I was saying when I started getting into keto 10, 15 years ago, low carb, I hate the word keto, but the sugars that you have in the recipes that are keto recipes on Pinterest that I'll find have the monk fruit. And anytime you buy the monk fruit at the grocery store, in the small print, it says with erythritol. And if people have taken stuff or have gone to conferences as Hack Your Health and before that KetoCon, everybody had erythritol and products, and you taste stuff, and everyone would joke that you'd be running to the bathroom because everyone has GI stress or gas or something when they have too much erythritol. So I don't like erythritol. Monk fruit is okay. Stevia gives me a headache, but allulose might be something if I'm making some low carb options, cookies, shortbread, stuff that you can do without. They're gluten free, of course. For me, wheat free, but lower carb. Talk about this option for those who want to have some treats over the holiday season.
Yeah, of course. So maybe firstly, so who are RX Sugar? So we are a health and wellness company totally disguised as a food company. So the mission of the company really is to solve for sugar because of a lot of what we've just explained. When you look into the science behind it,
Yeah.
it just has no place or need in modern environment when we have food at every turn and corner. At the same time, we are human and very kind of deep rooted to have wants for nice sweet things. And so we believe that allulose sits in a league of its own as that sweet alternative for the many reasons that we've discussed already in the last kind of half an hour or so. And so what we really aim to do is formulate gold class products that are easy to use, easy to implement, and practical, that are specifically designed for blood sugar control and satiety to help people reclaim back or be part of the jigsaw to reclaim back their metabolic health.
Mhm.
So maybe actually, if you go to the main product page, I'll just talk through the different products that we have and how, let's say, some of the examples of how each of them can be used. So we have obviously our just regular crystal, which is the one in the 2 pound canister. One of the other benefits of allulose over and above the others that you mentioned, a lot of them have a lot of, I would say side effects or compromises that come with. Allulose is a fully functional sugar, so you can bake with it. It is a rare kind of natural sugar. So our 1 pound canisters and our liquid allulose can be used in baking, to bake cookies, to bake, cakes, whatever you would want. Also be used for coffee, for adding into any drinks, smoothies, whatever you want to use and put it in for. So that's kind of the basic product. On top of that, we've then started to formulate products more for practical use. So the Swelthy snacks that we have, our chocolate bars, and Swelthy standing for a mixture of sweet and healthy, are minimally formulated with only 5 products that combine into a chocolate bar that Thomas DeLauer says tastes like a Twix.
Mhm.
So these, obviously, you can just pack with you. You can have them just as a snack. You can have them as before you have even a meal, actually, to help, naturally stimulate that GLP-1 to help manage with portion control. And so they're just a really great product that you can kind of have with you at all times. We then have another great one for using out and about, actually, are our Swelthy sticks. So these are the ones just on the left here.
Mm.
So that's just pure flavored
Nice.
allulose. So it comes in
Mm.
sticks. you've got different flavors, and you can mix them in water, you can mix them in yogurt, but most people, kids especially, like to just they taste like candy. So there's just pure flavored allulose. So you can actually just take those straight. I personally use these. I always carry some when I'm out and about. If I'm eating out in a restaurant and you don't quite know what is in the food there, for me, it's always an insurance policy to minimize any glycemic, spikes or incursions based on whatever food might be in the restaurant or outside of your control. They're also Professor Ben Bickman's favorite product. So he famously is his hunger kind of demons and gremlins come out in the evening, and he used to, he'll openly say this, 5, 6 bowls of
Yeah.
cereal. Like cereal was always his weak point. So he finds now if he gets those hunger cravings, he just takes, one or two of the Swelthy sticks, because again, they're 0 calorie. It's not actually um, um, absorbed by the body, but it stimulates his satiety. And he says he has a couple of those, and then his cravings just go away and diminish. Whereas previously he would have had five helpings of cereal. So that is a really great product. We've got the keto brownie mix or the instant brownie mix, which is a really cool product. You just add 1 scoop of that. I think you add two teaspoons of or 2 tablespoons of water, and you just put it in a mug. You put it in the microwave for 45 seconds, and you have this 0 net carb, 0 glycemic, 0 sugar, really nice brownie mix. So that if you just
And you,
want a quick instant dessert or a hunger buster, it is amazing for that. Pairs
and
really
you,
great. So yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was waiting for you to finish. Are you done?
I was just going to say,
Pairs
and it
well.
pairs really, really well with. So I love House of Macadamia, the macadamia nut puree. So if you add just a little bit of their
Ooh.
macadamia nut butter or nut puree on top, then you just have this healthy fat hunger buster dessert that literally you won't feel like eating anything else until the next day. Um, and then finally, our syrups. So we've got a range of different flavored syrups. So we've got caramel, pancake syrup, chocolate, and these are just really fully functional. You can use them to make great coffees and lattes. You can use them, add them to yogurt. I personally love the vanilla in some full fat, Greek yogurt. It just gives it a really nice kind of sweet profile. But you can also use them in baking, use them in chocolates. You can use them all sorts of stuff. So we have a range of products really designed to help at home baking, but also practical products if you want a quick dessert or you want a chocolate bar on the go, that you can always, help manage that hunger satiety pathway and satisfy that sweet taste, but without having to compromise your metabolic health.
Hmm. I was going to say the brownies, though, I'm not a fan of using a microwave. So can you make that in the oven? Because I'm
So
anti-microwave.
yes, you can. You are absolutely right. So you can make it in the oven. Yes. So there are instructions on the website to make it in the oven as well as in the microwave. So yeah,
Mm,
microwave is the quicker option, but the
yeah.
better option, I totally agree, is the oven.
And don't microwave with plastic either, people. Double whammy.
Yes,
Some of you will
agreed.
do that.
So yes, you can do in the oven as well, of course.
And then, so I think, this is great. As I said, I just do baking at Christmas time. I try to avoid the rest of the year because I find like craving sugar. If I had something as this, I'd crave. I'm not a big sweet person anymore, but I like a piece of chocolate at night or something. But if people have sugar addiction, is this safe for them to have, or I would think people that are the not moderators, they should avoid having these sweeteners added to their food to create more sweetness addiction, sugar addiction.
So a little bit back to what I would say earlier, which is if you have successfully retired the sweet and sugar pathway in your body, then
Yeah.
I would say keep it that way. Um, because I think a lot of this comes down to also the emotional relationship with food as well, which is a much more complex than just the biochemistry or the physiology. So I would
Mhm.
say if you've managed to do that, then carry on doing that. If you haven't managed to get control of that sugar pathway in the body, my personal opinion is that allulose can be a really great tool to help you to do that.
Yeah.
So another analogy that that I use, which is how I think allulose fits in, which is retiring that sugar carbohydrate pathway in your body is a little bit like if you've never been to the gym before and you go to the gym and you try to do pull-ups, right? It's really, really difficult to do. You just can't start doing pull-ups. So I think allulose is a little bit like having a weight-assisted pull-up machine where, okay, I'm using the weight of machine, allulose in this case, to at least stop consuming fructose or some of the other sweeteners that have, I would say more negative side effects. And you can start to build that muscle of taking control of that pathway. And then
Mm.
hopefully over time, you then, as you build up your strength, you reduce the weight assist as you would on a pull-up machine.
Yeah.
So over time, then you should need less and less sweet because you're retiring that pathway in the body. And as you do so, you should need kind of less and less, ideally to the point where, you retire that pathway. Or when you do feel like having sweet things, then at least there is a better option than to really set that pathway off again. And I would,
Hmm.
share my own personal, and this is where it is individual and, and personalized, but, so I personally, I would say retired and put my sugar pathway kind of, into remission, I would say somewhat. But I have, used allulose on and off because I'm interested to see how much of the metabolic health benefits, still apply if I have retired that pathway. And so for me personally, it's just there's been this great balance of I can have like my favorite coffees to have, which I don't have every day. Some other days is some, pure macadamia milk latte with then some RX sugar caramel syrup. So I have this really healthy fat caramel, you know, coffee, which I know is metabolically good and healthy for me. And I could just not have that and have my espresso and have black coffee, but like anyone else, so I've managed to bring a bit of enjoyment back and still have that, but not feel the need to have it, every single day. That's just me personally. So it's brought some, I would say, back into my life. It also means at home when we bake and we make, birthday cakes for my daughter's birthday, then there is at least a better birthday cake than
Good
previously just
option.
using, regular sugar and so forth. So
Hmm.
I would say that's I know it's a long-winded way of answering that, but I think it is very much personal. But I would really use it as that tool to help assist. If you understand what the pathway is in the body, why it's important to take control of it, and then see allulose as one of the tools that can help you to do that. And then you will see your metabolic health and your overall health, I believe, improve over time.
Hmm. Interesting. So I was just looking at the screen to share this part. If you are baking with it, as I will be for my annual Christmas cooking, baking treats, 1.25 cups of RX sugar is equal to 1 cup. So the recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar. You would
Yeah.
use 1.25.
So if you want an equal sweetness profile, yes, and that is because allulose is 70% as sweet as table sugar, around 70%. Um, so I would say start off with that, but I also think like everything, like we actually use significantly less because
Yeah,
we've
I do
changed our
like
palates
half.
over time to be, to be less sweet.
Hmm.
But a lot of it depends upon what your palate is used to and where you want to use it as a starting point.
Yeah, some of the recipes I just put like barely any sugar in it and just a little bit, but because a lot of the recipes do say like 1 cup or 2 cups or something if you're making, I don't even know what I'm making, but shortbread, for example, is just what's shortbread? Butter and sugar.
Yep.
And you're just not wanting to get all that sugar if you're more of a lower carb person and metabolically healthy. You just don't crave that sweetness, but you want a yummy treat. That's a tradition that you still want to enjoy once a year, but you don't need the amount of sugar that's calls for in all these recipes. And especially if you've tried the erythritol stuff, it's not good. Not good feeling afterwards. So,
I agree. And again, this is as always, I always share my personal perspective. And yeah, and the science I think backs it up that it is truly in a league of its own versus, the
Mm.
other options out there. And I again, I always look um, from an evolutionary perspective. And one of the other things that I like about allulose is that is a rare natural sugar. So it is our bodies are used to, you know, having it within our systems because it's found in small amounts in a number of different foods. So I think that's interesting. And actually, the biggest question that I asked myself when I was considering joining RX Sugar is why is it not found in more amounts in fruits in nature? Why is it only found in small amounts? And I think the simple answer to that is never in evolutionary history have we needed a metabolically healthy sugar because sugar and fructose has been specifically there from a nature's perspective to or we've selectively evolved to use it to promote mitochondrial dysfunction and to store fat instead of to create energy. So, because it's been a survival mechanism. And so we've simply never needed a metabolically
Hmm.
healthy sugar before. So, I
Yeah.
just think maybe it's serendipitous that nature has hidden this
Hmm.
metabolically healthy sugar, in small amounts, which is also, again, where I'm the first to admit, look, our bodies aren't, I think, designed to have significant amounts of allulose in them for long periods of time where use it as a tool and use it as and when you need to. I think it is far better than any other option out there. Hence why I joined the company because I
Hmm.
truly believe, and it was one of the other things that I kind of thought about as I was joining the company. I truly believe if the $120 billion sugar and sweetener industry was kind of instantly overnight replaced with allulose, I think you would see a massive decrease in all of the chronic diseases because
Hmm.
sugar and fructose is such a driver of all of these diseases. So that was another reason why I personally decided to join the company because I think more people, yeah, need help to get this pathway in our body, which is powerful biology, which has helped us survive as a species, but in a very different environment. In the current modern environment, it is just creating the breeding ground for many of these chronic diseases.
Hmm. Well, I just want to add last note that I did see JJ Virgin was talking about using allulose pre meals to help her digestion. It's kind of like berberine, is to help the glycemic effect on foods if she's eating a higher carbs in a meal. Does that something similar?
Yeah, exactly. So if you maybe one of the other articles, but yeah, there was a great randomized controlled trial. I can send you through the link to add in, which is what we spoke about a little bit earlier, which is
Hmm.
when you consume allulose with carbohydrates or sugar, when you have just the sugar on its own, you get a significant spike in glucose. When you take allulose with it, it acts like a protective effect. So your blood glucose spike will be
Hmm.
moderate. And if you take just allulose on its own with nothing else, then the randomized control trials show that it actually decreases your postprandial glucose and insulin, hence the can chocolate lower your blood sugar challenge that we ran at Hack Your Health. And so, yes, if you are having a higher carbohydrate meal, taking some allulose before that can significantly help mitigate your postprandial glucose and insulin spike. So it really plays. And the other, story I'll share specifically on this. So as I realized this, I'd spent a couple of years with my daughter, who's 11 now, really trying to educate her on the food environment, on ultra processed foods, and how to kind of, make better choices. But the school lunch was still outside of my control. And then when I came across allulose and the RX sugar products, I then started, and this was even, I became a customer before I joined the company. I was buying the chocolate bars and I was giving her one to take to school every day with explicitly just have this, before you have your lunch because
Oh.
it helps mitigate, a lot of the postprandial glucose and insulin spike
Mm.
when when the food environment as a parent is outside of your control. And so that was a really interesting turn for me of how is it that I'm now giving a chocolate bar to my daughter to go to school with? But
Yeah.
once you understand metabolic health and the metabolism of the body, you kind of understand this. again, it's just like, well, it's a great insurance policy, and so and I continue to do that because managing your postprandial glucose and insulin spikes is one of the most important things you can do for your long-term health and longevity, if not the
Yeah.
most important. But it's I would arguably even say in current food times, it's probably the most important thing actually.
It monitor your glucose levels periodically. We're in a CGM or testing as Keto Mojo.
So
Like what you're
honestly,
doing.
so yeah, even to the point where, and I know we'll dig into this on a future episode about my swim challenge. So one of the
Hmm.
interesting things for me on the swim challenge was just how important CGM was actually over and above blood labs because I could literally track and correlate my average glucose levels, the increase and decrease with my blood markers. And actually, when you understand what's going on in the body, I would be actually wearing a CGM and tracking that over time. Obviously, it doesn't give the level of fidelity of detail, but I think it is one of the greatest signals of your metabolic health that, hey, I want to keep my blood glucose, stable at this level. If I start to see it drift northwards, and it doesn't always have to be food. For me in the swim, it was actually lack of sleep and stress that drove my average glucose levels to spike, significantly. So understanding that in near real time and the impact it's have so you can work to recorrect that, I think is such a power, as well as understanding how you respond to different food types. I think the combination of those two, I think it's actually dramatically underused for what's my average glucose doing over time. But I think it's one of the most important biomarkers that I believe more people should track and take note of.
Yeah. Have you found a glucose monitor you like to use? What brand? Libra,
So
Free Libra, and there's Dexcom.
yeah, so my personal combination, and they did actually provide me them for the swim, is levels with the Dexcom G7. So I have tried the Abbott as well. I've tried NutriSense, a few of the others, for two reasons. One, I just find, especially doing a lot of running and swimming, I find the Dexcom G7 just much more comfortable the way the kind of the product actually sits, whereas I found the Abbott just a little bit more. I could feel it a lot as I'm running and doing exercise. And I
Hmm.
think that levels do the best job in terms of actually giving you insights into your average glucose level, what's happening metabolically, your response to foods, your area kind of under the curve, your spike. Because that's the other common, I would say, misconception is, blood glucose spikes aren't necessarily bad things. It's your body's natural physiology, but it's how you respond to that spike. So, if you do have a high carbohydrate or sugar, and if you, see this kind of rapid spike and a rather quick fall, that shows that your body is metabolizing kind of that properly and you're ramping up insulin and then you're dropping down quickly. But if you have I would say a spike that's a bit more prolonged and it stays up for longer before coming down, that's one of the signs of insulin resistance because your body effectively is not able um, to, I would say, turn up
Yeah.
those hormones and turn them down more effective. So I think levels just do a really great job of helping you understand that more than any of the other apps out there.
I just did a good video on their blogs are amazing. I think they have the best education on their website. I shared a video going over some of their suggestions, but
I agree. I
I
think they've got
think they're good.
I love the podcast, the blog articles. I think they do a really great job of communicating, the importance of metabolic health and the different kind of pillars within that. And so, yeah, I love the product and I love what they stand for and what they're doing as a company to helping people take more control over their health because
Mhm.
it's needed now more than ever.
Yeah, thank you. So, anything else you want to add in the show notes? Where can people get RX sugar online or is it in grocery stores? I'll put everything in all the links in the notes below.
Yeah, so if you want to buy any products, then of course online at rxsugar.com is usually the best place to go. And we will ship those directly to you, especially if you're in the US. But we also sell through Amazon, we sell through iHerb in terms of online presence and footprint. We are in over 20,000 stores across the
Mhm.
US, actually, but not necessarily all products in all stores. We have a store locator on our website, so you can go type in your zip code and it will tell you what products we have available in, in which stores. But we are in Walmart, we're in Kroger, we're in
Mm,
a bunch of Albertsons, CVS, we're in a bunch of different stores. Yeah, that's the best place if you want to go. And obviously, you can also, can share your link as well to
mm.
obviously to order through our website through you as well.
Great. Are you guys going to Expo West Natural Product Show, Anaheim next March?
Not confirmed plans to, but hopefully we'll be there. Yeah, still trying to figure out which events to head to next year. So that's currently in the mix.
Well, that's the big one for getting into the grocery stores. But it's crazy, crazy show that is. So
Yes, indeed it is.
thanks so much for your time. We'll do another podcast, separate topic. We still need to go over the lab, so that's on our to-do list, and we will post this on the YouTube channel so people can get this information out for that holiday cooking and baking season.
Yes, very, very important because yeah, it is that time of the year where we tend to overindulge on things. So I think having tools that can help mitigate or minimize some of that impact, I think is really important. Otherwise, and I
Mhm.
know, and this is, you know, maybe for the listeners who haven't listened to the previous episode, 10 years ago I was 260 pounds and couldn't run more than a couple of hundred meters, couldn't swim more than 50 meters because I was in this vicious cycle of, the standard Western diet, and I know most of you are following, I would say, already on the journey to kind of converting to, to low carb as well. But I've also been through periods where I've regressed back to that. So we are human in nature, which is why understanding the biology, I think, is so important. And I've had a great experience this year of what it's like to work against your own biology, and it's really difficult. So once that pathway
Mhm.
is kind of activated and turned on, it's our bodies trying to keep us alive. And some of the irony is, though, but the signals that they send us reinforce that activity. So I think the more people know and understand that, the more hopefully they can start to, I would say, make better choices through the holidays to not go absolutely crazy, or at least have go-to things which aren't, as bad. And so I'm all for, enjoying oneself, but if you can do so consciously and try to minimize the metabolic damage you do, then you'll be, I think, healthier and happier in the long term.
Yeah, well said. I know we are doing a live webinar. I'm doing one with Sweet Beat Life on heart rate variability testing and Nirvana Health on the vagal nerve stimulator and how that will help all this too as well, because you can have that vagal nerve, that gut brain connection stronger. So that will be Wednesday, January 8th, I think, at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then we'll talk about this 30-day metabolic harmony program I'm putting together. But I think it's all on the same mission. We're just trying to get us all improve how we age and be metabolically healthy, working at a cellular level, working on the mitochondria. So, so much to dive into, but I think it's, taking ownership of your health and making yourself priority, take care of the whole you now so you can be your best self in the future is so important. And a lot of things are simple, get out, move more, keep it simple, not complicated.
I wholeheartedly agree. A lot of it is relatively simple. And I think the final thing on that point is, and it's how do you turn those vicious circles into virtuous circles? And that's where it does require some effort to change. But the practical tools to help and some of the accountability can help do that and it took me 6 months to get there. But once you get there and you get into that virtuous circle, then your body and your mind, you are just in a different place, and all of them can compound on each other in a good way.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of it is simple lifestyle changes. The challenges are Western society. The deck is almost stacked against everyone because at every turn and corner you have products and lifestyles that are appealing to your evolutionary biology, but not to give you health and longevity. So I think it's the understanding to try and navigate those situations and circumstances as best as you can. So, and I thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing with your podcast and your coaching around all of this, because the more people need to know so they can make better decisions.
For sure. So thank you and enjoy your holiday season as well.
Will do. Likewise. Thanks, Debbie.